A very similar kind of offense, and they're glad to get their quarterback back. Tua Tagovailoa returning to the Miami Dolphins. Much
Thank
needed,
God.
Tyler. Much needed, bro. Because this was ugly. This was worse. Even coming out of the bye, Tyler, I was like, yo, I think Tyreek, he'll be fine. Jaylen Waddle, they'll probably scheme some things up. This offense don't even look half of what it is with Tua
No.
gone. Tyler Huntley starting, that had to change. And then Tim Boyle comes into the game. I think overall, all of us in the fantasy community are like, thank God Tua. And I didn't realize how bad it was going to be without him. But
Yeah,
Tyreek, man, Jaylen Waddle, I mean, this has to be the one time you're going to be able to get these guys for less than face value, right?
absolutely. And so I went in one of my leagues. I have Tyreek Hill, right? And this is like my favorite, my league with all my high school friends. It's like my most competitive league. Heading into the weekend, right? I had, well, heading into the 1 o'clock slates, I had Tank Bigsby already and Denver's defense. So I already had like 40 some points scored. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to easily win this. I was already projected. I had Tyreek Hill, I had Tank Dell, and I had Jaden Reed. My three
Oh,
starting wide receivers totaled like 4 points for me. So it was absolutely, I was so pissed. I'm still like kind of salty about this because
he's
I even had,
still human right now.
I had Jaden Daniels too. So it was like this,
God.
so many things, and Travis Kelsey, who was asked to. Anyways, so this team just rough. But yeah, I think like if anybody, if fantasy managers are smart, right? I don't think that they would be selling Tyreek Hill or any of these guys. We know what their true potential is. We saw it early in the season. Now, if there's some managers that are like, I'm worried that, potentially Tua could get hurt again or whatever, I'd be buying up because we just know. I also think a little bit of a narrative on my part. Tua's going to come back into this thing with like this chip on his shoulder. You know what I mean? Like people are kind of saying I should retire. I should hang it up.
Yeah.
Nah, this offense been awful. They paid me. Now they know, hey, look at this product you're putting out there on a week to week basis. It's been awful. So I just kind of like this narrative thing where this team has looked bad. And I think they just turn it's a complete 180. We know how explosive they can be. I have a lot of hope going forward because of these players. It's not like they've been bad. It's just the quarterback situation. This offense is just not the same without a guy who understands the system, who can actually make the throws, stay in rhythm with this offense. So I'd be buying up all these Dolphins players. I would even be buying up Jalen Wright, who probably isn't very expensive, just because
You
we
think
have,
so?
yeah, I'll be buying him up, not because he's more of a stash kind of player, absolutely, but the potential is massive just because you have, Devon Achane's been banged up already so far this season. Raheem Mostert's been banged up. He's a clear RB3, and I think he would step into a massive role. So I'd be buying up all these guys if I can.
There's a two-part thing here because I love the excitement. I love that Tua's back, and I understand what he's going to do for this Dolphins offense. Like Jaylen Waddle obviously gets bumped up from like barely playable flex to like, okay, strong wide receiver 3, back end wide receiver 2. It's just who he is as a player. Tyreek goes from like middling, very questionable, risky wide receiver 2 to elite top 5 wide receiver just off this one move, right? But to me, the one thing that is also at play here is in a couple weeks, it's documented. Once the weather gets a little bit more of a factor, once this cold sets in, this timing offense gets thrown off a little bit. So I think you have a really good window here to like recoup some of the value that you lost from a Tyreek, from a Tua, from a Devon Achane, and more so the passing game than the run game. Because what happens with this Dolphins team typically is as the wind becomes a little bit more of a factor, they have to lean onto the run game. We see a little bit more of a Devon Achane. We'll see a little bit more probably a Raheem Mostert. As you mentioned, Jalen Wright could become a factor. So I kind of think Raheem Mostert is a little bit of a buy low guy. Like if out of this entire committee, you got to pay full price right now for Tyreek. You got to pay,
Yeah.
Jaylen Waddle's probably another good buy low guy. Devon Achane, you're not probably getting Devon Achane at low cost.
Mm-mm.
But I think Raheem Mostert might be a player who I wouldn't advocate for him as like an RB2, so to speak, but more so just like a piece on your bench you can get in a deal that's not going to cost you at a very thin position right now in fantasy.
Yeah. And kind of what you were saying too, the weather change. But I also look at their schedule, and I was worried about their schedule heading into the season. But now and this is why, in my opinion, we just don't look at the schedule because things will change a lot throughout the season. Cleveland, we're really worried about
Yeah.
Cleveland. I wouldn't be worried about Cleveland at all anymore right now.
Well,
New
at
York
Cleveland is
Jets.
different. At Cleveland is different. At
Okay,
Cleveland is different.
sure. The New York Jets, I mean, they have not been playing very well. Maybe they get hot, but if this thing continues with the Jets how it's going right now, is this going to be a team that is going to be motivated later in the season? I don't know. So I would be buying up and the other thing with the Dolphins too, last thing, they already had their bye, which is important as well. So you don't got to worry about that bye. Um, we'll see. It all depends on how expensive they'll be. But like you said, Tyreek Hill is probably borderline on. You probably could have bought him, when Tua first went down, but now, yeah, I don't think you'll be able to get it.
He's back at full price, and I think this Dolphins team, just in general, is probably going to have a couple strong weeks here. We got at home against Arizona, we got at Buffalo, which should be somewhat of a shootout, and then you got at the Rams, right? And then you got the Raiders. So before we even step into the second half of the year, we got some plus matchups for the most part here. Obviously, the Bills a little tougher, but some plus matchups here on paper. I think this could be a really good time to like get the maximum value you can. And then the trade deadline is
Yeah.
right around week 11 in most leagues. So if you have any issues or maybe you're looking to sell high at that point, that would be the time to do it. Right now,
Yeah.
get your value back because this offense is going to hum. The one thing that I am a little concerned about, though, I'm not going to lie to you, is I love Mike McDaniel and everything that he brings to the table. I think he's a great coach. But is this offense a little like too predictable at times, so to speak? Like I think that was the reason we saw Devon Achane being used at like as slot and throwing him the ball a little bit more earlier in the year, right? Like we saw that kind of that wrinkle was thrown in there. Last year it was the speed motion behind the line of scrimmage with Tyreek Hill getting the guys going, and I think this has become a little, unfortunately, it's been kind of like gimmicky in a way. This
Yeah.
Miami offense has been, and I kind of wonder like maybe when they play bad defenses, this is a good team, but like when they play good defenses, is it like a gimmick offense and they're going to get, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, for
I'm
sure.
concerned a little bit about this offense just in general.
I mean, looking at the schedule though, we only have to really worry about Buffalo for basically until the Green Bay Packers look pretty legit defensively. So the Patriots, oh man, I mean the run defense is atrocious right now, but really it's just Buffalo. You got a ton of great matchups, and like you said though, you could I wouldn't, if I had Dolphins players, you you could potentially cash out right now just because I think the value is incredibly high, but I would give it a couple weeks because these are some really, really good matchups that they should absolutely take advantage of. And then if you're, a little skeptical of the late season, sure, I would sell then. I wouldn't sell yet. I would give them a couple weeks. And then because also I don't want to put it out there, but you always have the re-injury to Tua potentially,
Yeah.
which we know. My God, you can't even start them. You can't even start like these guys without Tua. Like Tyreek Hill, 5 points, 5 points, 6 points, 9.1 has not been startable. That's not startable.
Damn.
So yeah, I would just kind of let it play out a little bit and then maybe look to sell high.
I didn't think there was a world, Tyler, where we're like, yeah, he's been healthy the whole year and he's not a top 40 receiver. There's
insane.
no world in my head would I've ever thought that.
It's insane. I mean, especially after week 1, because he puts up 23 points and you're like, this is Tyreek Hill. And then it's just, it's been awful.
The major piece there, Jaylen Waddle, bro. We got to see something out of him because this has been a terrible, like if you drafted Jaylen Waddle as your wide receiver 3, it's been like absolutely abysmal.
I mean, if you drafted any of these guys, it's been awful. It's just been, it's a situation where the quarterback to an offense just matters so much. And it's a massive hit when you get these guys in here who, I don't know why the fuck Tim Boyle's even playing. This guy should not even be a starting quarterback. I don't know.
I don't understand. And been better.
Seriously, I don't know what the hell they're thinking.